Welcome back to the Becoming Her podcast. You guys, Dr. Ann and I are here with a banger of an episode. So today we are going to be chatting all things holidays and particularly navigating the holidays, being able to master the food noise that comes with that for a lot of people and escaping the typical. I read a study once, and I don't know how up to date this study is, but it was a while ago. And it said the average American gains 8 to 10 pounds over the holiday season, which is it's crazy. It's crazy. So we are going to, like I said, just chat all things, how we're going to work through this, how we're going to come tackle this, how we're going to get in front of this, and how you're truly going to be in the driver's seat and be able to coast through the holiday season. Because I cannot believe, I don't know about you, Anne, but Halloween's it's here. It's like, I swear summer just started, and then you blink and it's gone. And like you said, you have football and all the things that consume us during school year, but I mean, are just yeah, you're shaking your head.
Amen. It has been a hot ride from the start of school to now. And where I've got kids already planning, to like, hey, mom, I want to come up for Thanksgiving and Christmas. Are we going to have a place to stay? And I'm like, all right, we're going to do this.
You're like, yeah, Thanksgiving, Christmas, it's approaching quicker than I just cannot believe, I swear, every Christmas. And don't get me wrong, I love holidays. Like, holidays are like my favorite year. Thanksgiving's my love language. I could probably do like Christmas. Yes, but I love all things holiday, but I swear every Christmas it gets over with. And I'm like, okay, another year before we have to go through the madness again. And then I blink and it's here again. It's crazy.
Mhm.
But let's kind of dive into that. Cause like we just said, holidays are here, you guys. They are right around the corner, and we are going into the most food focused season of the year. And I would really love to hear how you tackle this with a lot of your clients, because I know that this is something that obviously is very present in what you do. So can you just kind of give us an insight of how you start tackling this? Because I know for a lot of people, there's a lot of anxiety that goes into the holidays.
Oh, 100%. And one of the things I wanted to touch on is that the holidays in particular bring up a lot of stress, especially for doing well, ironically. And that is because a lot of us really long to have all of the foods that the holidays bring. I mean, there's a lot to be said for just how holidays are connotated with good foods and treats that we only get once a year, and grandma's special cookies and mom's special stuffing and so on and so forth. And none of that is bad. I mean, I grew up and we had lots of cookies and lots of desserts, probably too many at Thanksgiving. I mean, there was the dessert table, I think, was even larger than the main table. Like the turkey was
My
kind of
kind
like
of
a side
Thanksgiving.
dish. um, and so I hear a lot of people get really anxious about this for a couple different reasons. One, I don't want to lose all my progress. Um, Two, I don't want to binge. And this is like high tide to binge, especially Thanksgiving. All the food's out. Christmas, everybody's bringing food. It's not just food during Christmas Eve dinner or Christmas Day. It's also all the treats that are given to us, all the treats that show up at work. Everyone's given us food all through this
Potlucks,
season.
all the holiday
And so what
parties.
happens is, like, we hit Thanksgiving, and from that point forward, it's like this avalanche of food, literally, and sometimes our behaviors, and until we make it to the new year. And then on the flip side, I have other people that are just saying, well, I want to make sure that I maintain my progress. So do I just not eat all this stuff? And then walk away from the holidays, maybe feeling really proud of themselves for not eating all the things that they otherwise would have binged on, but really disappointed and discouraged because they're sitting back watching everybody enjoy the sweets that they want to be eating and that they love, and they're not partaking. Um, and so that brings up a lot of stuff for us as human beings, not just because we're not able to share the food, but we kind of feel like the odd man out. And if I don't know about you guys, but if that's what living and managing food well is going to look like, I don't know about you, but to me that's not what I want.
Not
I
a
don't
life I want to live.
want to do that. I
Yeah.
don't want to be the odd man out. I want to be able to enjoy all the sweets. So I want to address, and this is going to be a word that a lot of people hear over and over and over again, but I'm going to say over and over and over again. The first step is mindful eating. Um, and what I mean about mindful eating, a lot of what we do when we're either graze eating or binge eating is we just start eating and we never stop. And we stop listening to our body's cues that we're full. We stop listening to, once we get into routine and rhythm of eating a set amount for lunch, breakfast, dinner, snacks, okay, our stomach actually shrinks to that. and it actually can maintain that food. And when we are overeating, the problem is that we don't even realize that we're full. A lot of times it's because we're eating so stinking fast
Mm.
that our brain can't catch up with what our stomach is saying. And so if you're like me, and I'll admit this freely, as I have lunches that are very short, very, very short. I scarf food in between appointments where I'm like getting down food in less than 5 minutes. Well, I'm still hungry, but fortunately I go into something. So my brain has a chance to catch up with me like, oh yeah, that's good. That's all I needed. Um,
Good now.
when we're sitting down in front of so much food, that if I eat like that in front of a lot of food, I'm going to keep eating until I hit that 15-minute mark. And now I have the potential of eating twice as much food than what I needed, or twice as much food than what my stomach can actually hold appropriately.
Mm.
And so some of mindful eating practices are actually about being really intentional around that food. My lunch hours are not a great example of this, but when we go into the holiday season, making sure that we're being mindful, not just in what we're putting on our plate, but also the pace by which we're eating,
Mm.
and whether or not the portion size that we're consuming is accurate. Am I having a serving of stuffing, or is this more like 3 servings? Did I just pick up dessert, or did I get the equivalent of 3 desserts? I like to call it um, measuring food with our eyes, or with our bellies, instead of, I measure, sorry, I said that wrong. I measure peanut butter. That's one of my favorites, with my heart,
Yes.
instead of with any real measuring device. And the reason I say that is that and I've learned this, and it's been very humbling. I now have like a dripper thing so I can do a peanut butter drizzle, and I weigh it out. So I make sure that I'm not measuring with my heart, because my heart wants to say 3 tablespoons of peanut butter is a tablespoon. And yet the weight scale will say, gosh, that was a tablespoon already.
And I want to interject for anybody who's never taken a period to track macros. I always say there's not a more sad day in life when you truly understand what a real serving size of peanut butter is, because y'all, it is not a lot of peanut butter. And so those that go into the pantry for their afternoon snack and, dip their apple into their peanut bar, which is great. It's awesome snack. But when you just consumed, like Ann said, 2 to 3 servings of peanut butter, and that was 600 calories almost, and majority of that being fat and very little protein. And this is where the I'm only eating 1,200 calories a day comes into play for a lot of people when you haven't taken a period of time to track your intake, because just because you're not eating a lot of the volume or a lot of food doesn't necessarily mean you're not eating a lot of calories.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I work with people on is getting to a place that you don't actually have to weigh things all the time, that you can eyeball it accurately. But for me at least, I have to hold myself accountable by every now and then pulling out the scale and checking it. And I'm like, all right, I was 100% off. And yes, I saw that. And I'm comfortable with being off today.
And deep
Um,
down inside, I knew it. I didn't want to know, but I knew it.
and it fits. So the first part is being really mindful in our approach, and being very wise about what we're going into. If I'm not wise about what it is that I'm eating, I will eat Thanksgiving like a trash panda. I'll just sit down, and it'll be like a buffet, and I'll put on a little napkin over here, and I'll just go, give me all the food, and I'm going to
Got the
eat it really
stretchy
fast.
pants going. We're
That's
we're
right.
prepared.
That's right. Please, those people out there, I know that you're laughing right now because you are my people. But we actually have to go into it with a plan. And if we're not going into it with a plan, we will default to whatever it is that we typically do. And so it does require us to be incredibly mindful about our approach to that, and what it is that we want food to look like, even when it comes to how I'm pacing food. If I'm sitting down and I'm really enjoying the conversations, and I've been in other places, I've had the blessing of going, to Europe, where they give you like a tiny portion of a meal, and it takes forever for them to bring out next, the next, the next part of the meal. And you really learn pacing and size. And it's really humbling when you're super hungry and you're sitting there going, why isn't my main dish ordered? Well, what you're realizing is that you're giving that appetizer time to digest. And so you actually eat much more mindfully when we do that. So really planning out pacing. The second aspect
Can I
that I
interject here too, Anne, before you jump in? Because I want to highlight that just because Dr. N says going in with a plan doesn't mean that you can't enjoy. I think a lot of people, when they put reference and frameworks around plans means that I'm going to restrict and I don't get to enjoy and I don't get to quote unquote maybe even indulge. Like a lot of people, I think, put that terminology around it. And just because you have a strategy and a plan doesn't mean that you don't get to enjoy all of the food. There's just
Yep,
intent behind it.
absolutely. Absolutely. And ironically, that is the second part of this that
Oh,
I was going to share is
cookies in
allowing
a
for
pod.
extras. Yes. So I don't often come across people that without some degree of remorse will say, I am so glad that I stuck to my meal plan for the holidays. Now, that does happen every now and then, especially if it's something that you're initially just really working on, and you can have a lot of pride in that. I do hear people talk a lot more about being able to have the food that they enjoy. And so this is where I'm going to challenge people to really, really test themselves. And this is the hard part. It is one meal. It is one treat. It is one afternoon. It is just one of something. And to allow ourselves to go into it. And so like this is where allowing extras, but also portion size comes into play. I might want to eat all the things at Thanksgiving, and I often do eat all the things. And I might pick and choose the things that I really love that I only get once a year that I'm going to get a full serving size of, or maybe a serving size and a half. And then I'm going to pick the things that I really enjoy, but I don't enjoy that much. And I'm going to give myself a half a portion size. Now, part of this is that even in that one meal, like let's say Thanksgiving, I'm still going to get more than a traditional meal. It's more than a traditional dinner for me, and I'm okay with that. And I would actually challenge and oftentimes challenge clients to identify like, if you want to, go ahead and test it, record it, and see exactly how much over that you're going. Because a lot of times, what we think is, and this is where the stinking thinking comes in, and where we wind up just going ahead and going full Monte and binging or grazing the rest of the day, is that when you actually put the numbers to it and you record a little bit of that meal, what most people will find is most people will only go about 600 to max 800 calories over what their budget might have been. And if you're a calorie fat or counter, otherwise I'm just getting a lot of more carbs and fats than I typically would. That is one meal. That isn't even a pound. And I hear people want to argue with me. They're like, I stepped on the scale the next day or 2 days later and I was up 3 pounds. That's lovely. That isn't real weight though. And what happens to us is that we go into it thinking that if I go even remotely a little bit over, then, and this is the golden phrase that you know what, I've ruined it. I might as well enjoy it. And enjoying it
Mhm.
means I am going to go carte blanche, trash panda over this entire meal, over this entire, right? So somebody brings something into the workroom. I have a donut that day. I feel really guilty about that donut. Somebody else brings something in, or I go out to eat. It's a holiday dinner, and I'm going to have all the food that I wanted. I'm going to have it in massive portions because I've already blown it with that first part of the day. Guys, you don't blow it because you have a little bit extra. That is normal. That is a part of life. That is very healthy eating habits. We blow it because we don't stop the extra. We blow it because we just start saying yes to everything from that point forward.
The F it mentality.
Absolutely. So allowing yourself to have a meal that goes over what you typically eat is actually incredibly healthy. It's a part of healthy balance. And one of the things that I really encourage people to think about is that we all have days. We all have days we get sick, we're running around too much, we exercise a bit more, we don't have time to eat a good solid meal. And so we snack through a meal. Again, we all have moments like this, but we don't count those days as our deficit days. It's not like, man, I got the flu for 3 days and I absolutely wasn't eating enough. We go, oh my gosh, I went over this day and I ate 800 calories extra.
Yep.
Guys, you were under a few thousand calories on the day that you were sick. Now, hopefully, we make that up because otherwise, we're just really hungry and cranky. But we look at those rough moments and moments that we overeat as lack of willpower, and we give ourselves permission to finish it and enjoy it by not having any self-control.
1,000%, 1,000%. And a solid tactic I like to use with my clients is I think a lot of people go into the high or into the holidays with this mindset. And same thing with even like dieting phases, right? This mindset of restriction. It all has to be like what I can't have and the anxiety that goes in and around the pumpkin pie and the cookies and all the delicious food. But if we go into the holidays with an idea of addition and what more can I give my body throughout the holiday or throughout this time frame, more protein, more whole foods, more fiber, right? That's going to help to naturally balance out these quote unquote needs to want to binge, these like, you know what I mean? You're going to look at said pumpkin pie and cookies, and of course you're going to want it because they're delicious and it's there and you're enjoying time with your friends and family, and food is more, it's gathering, it's social, and you want to be a part of that, and there's a space of that and being able to enjoy and being present and be aware in all of those moments. However, when
Mhm.
you've given your body adequate amounts of protein and adequate amounts of fiber, I promise you that need to binge on the whole pie or half of a dozen cookies just isn't going to be there like it would be if we didn't prioritize the addition piece of it, right? So when we can master the addition piece of it, it makes everything about navigating holidays so much easier without the need, because I think a lot of people is it's not necessarily that they feel like they have to, well, some do feel like they have to completely cut out, but I feel like for a lot of people, it's I don't allow myself to do these things. And so then it's the fear of, like Anne said, binging. And so
Mhm.
it's like I just don't have any because I'm afraid I'm going to binge. But then we just end up in a space where we're holding resentment. I remember trying to get through the holidays looking at like my closest friends and family, and I would just get so infuriated because here I was, and this is version 1.0, Nicole. I was 100 pounds overweight. I was limiting all the cookies and all the pies because I knew if I had one bite, that was it for me. That was just, I was in for. So I just told myself, I'm just having none. And then I would look at, or I was, surrounded by friends and family, and I was just so angry because I had all of these people that were, you know, relatively in my mind, skinny and thin and everything that I desire to be. And they could eat all the things and I couldn't.
Yep. Yep.
And it
And
just was this vicious merry-go-round that I was riding.
and and at our worst, what happens is that we actually move into a place of self-pity, and
Yep.
we say there's something wrong with me, I'm completely broken, woe is me, I'm the only person on the planet that can't eat all these yummy treats, look at all these thin people that are doing this. And if you are one of those people that the second you start, it's really hard for you to stop, this is where really set coping skills and planning out these coping skills in advance are going to come into play. So if I start eating dessert and I just don't want to stop, get your plate of things that you would enjoy. Tell someone, let someone know I'm only going to get one plate. We don't have to necessarily have this dramatic moment where you say, I struggle with this, but we can just say, I'm only going to get one plate of desserts today. I'm only going to get a couple half desserts or four half desserts, and I'm just going to be done. And then plan something for after that, going on a walk, going gray Thursday shopping, whatever that looks like on Thanksgiving,
I've never
but
heard
getting
that
yourself
term.
gray, gray
No, I
Thursday.
never heard that.
Yeah, it's Black Friday disappointment.
Yeah, I got that, but I was like, oh.
So, but give yourself permission to actually plan something that's incompatible with continuing to eat. I will tell you that more often than not, for those of us that just want to sit on the couch and watch a solid football game, that is a lovely pastime activity. I don't want to I don't want to steal anybody's thunder or break anybody's heart, but usually the more screen time we have, the more that we're going to eat. And that is actually scientifically proven that we will eat more the more screen time that we have. And so if that is something that you do want to do, maybe we break it up. Maybe we go for a walk, we sit back down on the couch. The other thing that I want to kind of point out, and this is something that I've seen time and time again that doesn't work very well for those of us that are struggling with food. Please do not undereat before that meal.
Mm.
Don't go into it saying, I'm not going to have breakfast. I'm not going to have lunch. I'm not going to have any snacks. I'm not going to have any appetizers. Plan those things out. And if it's, well, somebody's going to bring over a great charcuterie board or we're going to have lots of appetizers, lovely. Make that lunch. That's okay. Make it your snack. That is beautiful. But going into it hungry sets us up for a binge. And I never will go into Thanksgiving. I'm the person, I people in my family and they're like, I haven't had anything to eat today. And I'm like, really? I had breakfast and lunch. I'm feeling pretty good. And that's because it allows us to be mindful. We don't have to eat like we're not scarfing food because we're not starved. That's a great way of going into it. And you can slightly undereat if you want to, but you don't have to. It's not a requirement because again, this is only one meal. And if you plan it well and you plan yourself to get, even if you get a little dessert tray and you fill up that dessert plate with everything it can possibly have on it, that's okay. It was just one small plate. That's not going to tank your entire week. Now you do that every single day. Um, that will tank the week. But doing it once, that's not that bad of that honestly isn't going to do very much of anything.
Yep. And let me give you
But
guys the geeky side of this. For you to gain pound of fat, a pound of
uh-huh.
fat, okay, and I'm going to put some numbers to this because I think it helps put things in perspective. You would have to eat 3,500 calories above and beyond your maintenance calories. For most females, maintenance, and again, there's, whether you want to believe this or not, for most females, your maintenance is 2,000 plus calories, right? We're accounting for activity and whatnot and all of that. And that's most, and some more, some less, but you'd have to eat 3,500 calories above and beyond your maintenance calories to gain 1 pound of fat. And so, like Anne said, when you put it in perspective and you've taken periods of time to track and you understand food and its value, for a lot of people, the extra dessert or the extra serving of stuffing or whatever, 800, 1,000 calories, somewhere in there, right? Like, and that's enjoying the holidays and the dinner or whatnot. And so, but 3,500 calories above and beyond what your maintenance already would be a pound of fat that you gain. And so, again, this is what we do the majority of the time, not what we do the minority of the time. And if we think about holidays, it's, you know what I mean? 4 or 5 days, if we take Christmas Eve, New Year's Day, Thanksgiving, like maybe Halloween, if you're a big candy person kind of thing, right? So we have a handful of days over the course of 2 months of a holiday season. But like Anne said, when you have intent behind going into potlucks and social situations and parties and whatnot, you truly can be the person that is able to quote unquote coast through the holidays if you have intent and you have strategy behind what you're doing. And a lot of this starts within this. What I love when Anne talks about this is the mindfulness and being aware. And I like to highlight that just because you have strategy and you have a plan doesn't mean that you don't get to enjoy the holidays. If anything, you enjoy them more because you're present and you're aware because you have that strategy, and it takes out the overwhelm that the holidays can bring. And also, come January 2nd, you're not the person that's starting that crash diet to lose the 10 to 15 pounds that you gained over the holiday season super quickly to basically, lose 10 pounds to gain 10 or 15 back kind of thing. And this is what starts so many people at the beginning of this year or the beginning of the year on these vicious merry-go-rounds. And they can't quite catch themselves up to where they were last year kind of concept, right? And we continue to gain, 5+ pounds year over year kind of
Oh
thing. And
yeah.
so the strategy and the intentionality behind this is absolutely everything.
Absolutely. I had someone in my office, and she's been in recovery for a long time from an eating disorder, and she was so wise at how she looked at this. And this is another chunk, but I wanted to share this little tidbit with you. And that one of the things that she does now is she just looks at everything and she goes, "It's just a calorie. That's all it is. Like it's just energy, and it doesn't mean that I am a good or bad person because I had this form of energy. It's just an energy." And so one of the real challenges I see people talk about is like, all right, so I opened Pandora's box. I had Thanksgiving. That was wonderful. It was great. And now, next week came in and people are bringing leftover desserts from Thanksgiving, or heaven forbid, grandma brings fudge, my favorite peanut butter fudge. And I don't know what to do. I really want it, but I just had this, I don't have a plan. Just fit it in. That's all. It's a carbon of fat. Fit it in mindfully. And by mindful, I mean, take a look at what it is that you've got. I've got some room for this. Hopefully you got carbs and fat built. They're normal and healthy and they're good for you. And maybe it's not the best carbon fat in the planet, but it's just a carbon fat. Have it. Have a piece or two of fudge. Call it a day. That's it. Right? Somebody brings in a treat the next day. You really want to try it? Go ahead and have a little portion size of it. Again, fit it in. And maybe that means that we're gonna have to switch out something. Um, I heard someone talk about this about Mexican restaurants. They said, well, every single time I go to a Mexican restaurant, I overeat. And we said, okay, let's talk about that. And they're like, well, I like margaritas, I like tortilla chips, I like burritos. And by the time I finished, like I've eaten the whole thing. I said, well, there we go. Okay, you got to pick and choose. So you got to figure out what it is that you like the most, and then go with that. You really love the tortilla chips. You want to eat it? Great. I want to eat it mindfully. Now I'm going to grab a chunk of these and I'm going to put on my plate, and that's my serving size. And I'm not going to keep getting more.
Yep.
And maybe that means that I don't have a tortilla with my fajitas because I had it in my chips. All right. We've just budgeted. That's all that is.
Just like if you were to, hit up Nordstrom's, annual sale and you have $500 to spend and that's your budget, and you find $1,000 worth of things that you absolutely love, at that point, you only have $500 in your bank account. All you can realistically spend is $500. So it comes a pick and choose kind of situation. What gives you and brings you more joy? And I love this analogy because when you frame it this way, it really puts absolutely everything in perspective. And this is why I'm such a firm believer in tracking. And we've talked about this in other episodes. And I highly encourage somebody, if you're on the verge and you know what I mean, you just haven't quite mastered it because it feels overwhelming and it feels confusing, whatever the case may be, I would encourage everybody listening to take a period of time to track their intake, because when you understand, it's just a budget. And when you can start to look at food as that, right? Like as not just, I mean, food is fuel, it's fun, it's social, it's entertainment, but there's values to it. And when you can understand how to budget that intake, there is no need to restrict anything anymore. And it puts you in the driver's seat of all of this. And again, there's a lot of, and maybe we should just do a whole podcast in and around the mindset around tracking. And because I do think for a lot of people, it's obsessive. I hear this all the time. It's obsessive. It's overwhelming. It's this, it's that. And I'm like, would you ever walk up to your girlfriend who's budgeting her bank account and look at her and tell her she's obsessive? You would never in a million years, look at somebody who's budgeting their money and say that that's an obsessive behavior. But the mentality in and around tracking has seemed to just explode in that, in that kind of, I guess, framework. And again, I'm talking to you guys, I am not speaking to, I'm talking to the average person. I'm not speaking, obviously, I know Anne works with a lot of people struggling with eating disorders and whatnot, right? And there becomes a completely different space for that. So I'm talking to the average person right now. So please, please, please don't take what I'm saying out of context. But just like Anne said, it's a budget. And so if like at the Mexican restaurant, and like she said, okay, I really love the chips. So what brings me more joy, the tortillas or the chips? And it's one versus the other. It doesn't necessarily mean that I can't enjoy, but it's a pick and choose kind of situation. And so I do love when we start to frame it that way, because it just gives you so much flexibility and freedom. For me, people tell me tracking is obsessive and it's restrictive, and I'm like, really? Because I look at it as freedom. Because while you're over here on your fifth round of carnivore, like munching on your stick of butter and only eating meat, I get to eat donuts if I want donuts. And so to me, that's freedom, because it's autonomy for me. There's nothing that's off limits, and I know it fuels my body correctly.
Well, and some of what we can do, think of it like establishing routines, because I'm a big advocate of not doing something long term that doesn't fit in our life, right? You're going out to a restaurant, you don't want to have to get out like a mini food scale and weigh your in, like, but at a certain point we get to eyeball it when we understand with our eyeballs, not with our hearts. It's made peanut butter in my heart. But with our eyeballs, I understand, and I can look at that and I can go, that's roughly a half a cup, that's roughly a tablespoon, and I get how it all works. You don't have to track at that point, because you can see what's in front of you and your eyes can hold you accountable for what you believe 3 ounces is. And we test it. And that we do the same thing with budgeting, right? So when we're learning a financial budget, we will constantly check in on how much that cost. They like, all right, my heat bill was significantly higher this month than last. Does that track? How does this over time look? Am I using my water the same way? And we're looking at it not as a reflection of us as human beings, or not obsessively. I'm not constantly going to my bank account going, oh my gosh, did that $5 come out? Did that $20 come out? Did that, $300 thing hit? But rather I'm taking it simply as data points. And the better we get and the more rhythm we maintain around things, the expected things, right? The expected purchases, the expected water bill, that kind of stuff, the less often we actually have to touch base with it. And so sometimes what that looks like is simply tracking for more higher expense things like the holidays or a certain meal. Like, I'm going to just look at it as a data point. Yeah, that was roughly 600 to 800 calories more than I typically would have. That's great. And then key phrase on this one, key point on this, eat the next day normally. Don't you dare take away calories from the next day because you had 600 calories over. You are now in a vicious cycle that doesn't stop.
Yep.
Eat the next day normal.
100%.
You pick up the next moment and you just do the next moment, the next right thing.
Yep, 100%. And I want to point out too, like what Anna's saying, we start to be able to develop this skill set where we can see it with our eyes, but this comes after a space, you guys, of intentionally tracking for a period of time. I think a lot of people, intuitive eating is a big buzz term within the, fitness, health and fitness community. And I'm all about intuitive eating. And that is my goal for every single one of my clients, because intuitive eating to me is flexibility, it's freedom, it's sustainability, it's lifestyle. But that right's earned. It's not necessarily just given. And you can't expect somebody who to intuitively eat who's never tracked a, a period in their life. Because at that point, like Anna and I said, you don't know what a serving size of nut butter really looks like. You don't know what 6 ounces of chicken really looks like. People want to really it's like somebody who ate 2 ounces, you're like, oh, that was about 5 or 6 ounces, or vice versa, right? And like, oh, that's about a serving size of nut butter, and it was really three servings. And so it comes after a period of tracking where you develop that skill set, and it's just putting reps into it. And but when you take a period of time and you're intentional with that, that's why I'm such a big believer in tracking, and even without fat loss goals or weight loss goals or whatever the case may be, because that is intentional. I mean, it's education, and that's what's setting you up for lifelong sustainability.
Right. And this is inherent to our journey as human beings. So unless again you have that obsessive trend, you had an eating disorder, you micromanage your calories to the nth degree, this is going to be a hard like that is going to be a conversation with a therapist that you need to have, and not a conversation that you like, not something that you pick up from a podcast. But for everyone else, this is inherently what it means for us to grow in self-discipline and maturity when it comes to food. And I had this conversation earlier this week. Like, I hear a lot of people going, but I don't want to do this. I'm like, I feel this on every like every ounce of my being. I understand. There are some moments that I look around the room, and I have a granddaughter, and I look around the room and I'm like, is there not a more grown-up person to do this right now? Like, surely someone else can do this for me. And guys, there isn't. This is just a part of life. And so learning how to cope with this is a part of how we cultivate self-discipline. This is how we get to a place that we actually get free, is we have to learn how to have rules, how to have structure, and how to have data as a feedback. And if it's just simply I'm a bad person because I can't control myself, or I have no willpower, guys, you're setting yourself short. Like, you do have willpower. You go to the grocery store, you're not eating through the grocery store. You don't go to a friend's house and binge eat there. We're not grazing on everything there. You're not going into their pantry and going, I'm just going to have whatever I want. You have willpower. We just need to use more of it. And we need to have a plan for that. And once we get there, oh my goodness, it's lovely. It's absolutely wonderful. When you get to holidays or Thanksgiving, I used to not ever be able to control my reactions around candy for Halloween. And as a teenager, as a kid growing up, it was really hard for me. I just eat whatever I want. And now I can have one of something or two of something and I'm done. And it was lovely. It was great. I don't feel sick afterwards. I don't have the shame. I don't have the guilt. And it's wonderful because I get to move on. And that's what we have to do in order to get to that place. And
Right.
it's not because you're broken that you can't do it. It's just because you've never done it.
Yep. And I think the framework around it is really, really powerful here, you guys. I always like to say 6 months to a year of tracking, 6 months to a year of coaching for a lifetime of freedom, right? This is what is truly, it's short-term discomfort in the moment of, like Anne said, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't want to have to. And again, I hear that. I feel that. I went through a phase of that for a long time before I finally like broke down and started tracking my intake. And it was eye-opening. But with that being said, when you look at it as such a like 6 months in the short term might feel like forever, but when you're comparing it to the rest of your life and this freedom that it's going to give you, not just in a space of getting the weight off, but we're talking actually keeping it off. And maybe fat loss isn't even your goal, but putting you in the place where you control food, right? Like, you have complete and total control in and around food. And I know for a lot of you, the idea of that feels unrealistic, but it is so much more doable. But it is going to take us cycling through the uncomfortable. It is going to take us getting out of our own head and out of our own ego. And it is going to take us accepting that anybody who's at that place that you admire, or you hear people talk about being able to go through holidays without guilt or shame or anxiety, or do date nights or eat the food, had to cycle through all of the things that we're talking about right now, and had to develop the skill set, had to develop the awareness. It didn't just come naturally. I don't care who you are. Anybody who just thinks intuitively eating without the awareness, I mean, nobody intuitively craves a chicken breast, right? Like, we all want highly calorically palatable, dense, like calorically dense foods, I guess, that are delicious, and they have their time and place, and there's no reason to restrict them. But anybody, like I said, who's where you would, you aspire to be, has had to go through this phase. And so just knowing that it's a piece of the journey, but it's not the whole puzzle. It's not going to be your entire life. And I tell all of my clients, I don't want like, I don't want you attached to a food scale or a tracking app for the rest of your life. It's just not a lifestyle. It's not a way to live life. But there is a time and space that every single person, I truly firmly believe, on this planet should track for a short period of time. And again, I'm speaking to the general population. Again, you guys, please don't twist. I don't want you to think I'm speaking to, I know Ann deals directly with, extreme circumstances and situations, but I'm just talking to the average person who struggles with, losing the weight, their relationship with food, that type of thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I just want to do a recap really quickly just to hit the major points.
Yep.
So for the holidays, go into it with a plan. That is the number one for mindfulness. And the plan needs to be around what is it that I'm going to allow for myself. And I want to invite you to include that plan for some degree of indulgence and overage. But a specific plan for what that's going to look like, be it a serving size of plate or how many desserts I'm going to allow myself. We've got to have some idea about what it is that we're wanting to target and what we're wanting to do. Second part, watch portion sizes and pacing of how fast we're eating. You maybe can eat everything, but maybe you can only eat half a portion or a quarter of a portion size of everything that you want to eat at Thanksgiving, especially if there are a lot of options. And if you're like me and I like to try lots of everything, I want to have it all. So have it all, but you may not be able to have a portion size of everything. Then develop what it is that you want to do afterwards, especially, and this is especially important if you are someone who binges or graze eats. Once we open up Pandora's box and we have something yummy, plan an activity that is incompatible with eating. That is the best recommendation that I give for people with eating disorders. You absolutely can do anything and eat if you are motivated enough. However, we want to make it more uncomfortable for you to do that. You're out for a walk, you go for a jog. It's hard to do it, not impossible, but it's hard and it's uncomfortable. And that is a part of that journey. And then giving yourself some space to actually track it if you're really scared of it. Giving yourself space to just permit that overage and allow it, and then start the next day brand new, the next right step. Do not cut calories. Do not try to finagle macros or fat or carbs or any of that kind of nonsense. We're just starting today new. And then plan in things that you want, treats that you want, just into what it is that you're already eating. It's a carb and a fat. Go ahead and have it, but have a portion size that fits in what it is that you need for the day.
No, amazing tips. And as well as, like Anne said, she had mentioned this earlier, but please do not go into any of these events, you guys, starving. That is just like, it has been like such is a game changer. Like if you go, it just is leading to that binge for you. I think that there's a way to go into, like Anne said, you're going to have a big Thanksgiving, mid-afternoon lunch, dinner, whatever your family, how you guys celebrate, but go in, maybe your breakfast and lunch is very much so just protein focused, and that's fine. That's okay. Right. Like give your body what it needs leading up to these events is going to dramatically reduce that need to binge.
Thank you for that plug. I'm glad that you got
Yes.
that one. That one right there, I'm going to say is one of the biggest things. That is the thing that to this day, and I used to struggle with binging like nobody's business. But that is the thing that to this day that I will not ever give up. I do not go into any major food event where there's going to be lots of yummy things for me to eat. I will not go into it hungry, even if it means I stop beforehand, even if it's like 30 minutes beforehand and I have something to eat, a snack, or even a half of the sandwich. Sometimes I do that when I'm making dinner because I don't want to eat all the food that I'm making. Is I will literally stop and I will have like a piece of toast with some peanut butter and honey on it so that I can make dinner mindfully and then actually enjoy dinner and get a decent portion size of dinner. If I'm too hungry to do that, I have to eat first before I move on.
Yep. And I know it feels backwards for a lot of people. I'm going to eat a lot of food, and you're telling me to eat before I'm going to eat a lot of food. But it really is when we're talking just eating normal amounts versus full on binging and feeling uncontrollable around those foods, it becomes a night and day difference. So, and again, there should be intentionality of how you're fueling your body leading up to these events. I always say keep it very much so protein and fiber focused, and that's really, really going to help you. And that's going to help keep calories on the lower end as well, because we do know that we're going into these meal periods or these events, and calories are going to be higher than they typically would. And that's okay. Like Ann said, it's just a calorie. It's an event, social. I want you to be present. I want you to be aware. But so again, intentionality of how you feel your body leading up to these events. But please, please, please keep it protein focused, keep it fiber focused, and you will just experience a night and day difference with your need to go, I guess, go crazy or go ham per se on all of the things that there's scarcity in and around. So
Mhm.
Awesome. Anything else, Anne, before we wrap up here?
Yeah, I do have one last tip, and this is probably an entirely different episode, but I really, really fast want to brush on something that is important that we haven't addressed. Watch alcohol during the holidays.
Yeah.
It is not for the calories. It is really for the inflammation. It's going to cause the scale to jump regardless because just it's an inflammatory. But it usually breaks down whatever plan that we have set in motion. And so if you do want to drink for the holidays, please make sure that you've gotten in good food before you start drinking and be really mindful about the number of drinks that you want to have. And that's really because it for all of us, it doesn't matter how in control of a human you are, it lowers inhibitions.
Oh,
Uh,
intentionality goes out the window once we start drinking, you guys. I mean, let's be
yeah.
honest. It
And
just,
I hate saying this, but it's usually after about, I've seen it happen for people as little as one drink in, but it usually for a lot of us will happen after two drinks.
yep. I always say
So,
after at least one glass of water in between every two drinks as well. If you plan on having more than two drinks, have a glass of water. That's usually a solid guideline I put into place for a lot of my clients. But yeah, like, I mean, you have a glass of wine and that glass of wine turns into a bottle. Not that I know from personal experience.
right. And there's, again, this is a different episode. There's actually some biological and chemical reasons why that happens, and we can talk more about that at a different time and place. But it's not because you lack willpower. It's just because of what alcohol does to us as human beings. So there's a reason why some people fly into fits of rage when they drink too much or drink even just a little bit. It just what happens to us as human beings. So please be really mindful about that because that will tank even the best plans.
1,000%. And that's an episode we need to get on the books. So get on the calendar because that would be a good
Uh-huh.
one for sure. All right, you guys. Well, hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully this gave you guys some solid tools and tactics to start to implement to, truly, just feel a bit more in control going through the upcoming season. But we will see you guys in the next episode. Ciao.
If this is helpful, give me a like, follow me, or subscribe for more.